Welcome back, everyone. This is lesson 2 for remote learning week 5. Let's get started with our mindful minute. So find a comfy seat, sitting with your head, neck, and spine aligned, and prepare to take deep breaths together. I invite you to close your eyes, or you can look at the animation on the screen. And together, we'll inhale through the nose, nice deep breath, and exhale through the nose, emptying your lungs. Inhale, nice deep breath. And exhale, letting it go. Inhale. And exhale. Inhale, energizing oxygen. And exhale, carbon dioxide. Inhaling, energizing oxygen. Exhaling, carbon dioxide. One more deep breath in. And exhale, let it go. Allow your breathing to return to normal. And when you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes. And you are ready to start. So this week's lesson is fetal development. So the development of a fertilized egg to an embryo to a fetus and eventually a baby. Your learning target is I can explain fetal development. Pause the video now so you can write down the learning target. All right, we're going to start with a National Geographic video that overviews pregnancy. And there are check for understanding questions that go along with this video.
The product of millions of years of evolution, the human body is capable of many remarkable things, but none of which may be quite so incredible as the development of life in utero. Over 3 million babies are born each year in the United States alone. Worldwide, the highest fertility rate is found in Niger, where the average woman gives birth to approximately 6.49 children in her lifetime. Singapore sits on the opposite end of the spectrum at just 0.83, less than 1 birth per woman. While the number of births, customs, and traditions vary from culture to culture, the developmental process is essentially universal. Derived from the Latin word praegnatum, meaning before birth, pregnancy is the period in which the fetus develops inside the womb. Typically lasting around 40 weeks, human pregnancies are divided into 3 trimesters of 3 months each. Pregnancy begins in the uterus, where a sperm fertilizes an egg. If the sperm carries an X chromosome, the baby will become female, while a Y chromosome will result in the baby becoming male. The fertilized egg, or zygote, divides repeatedly as it travels through the fallopian tube, implanting itself on the uterine wall to form both the embryo and a specialized organ known as the placenta. Found only in eutherian or placental mammals, the placenta will manage waste and provide key nutrients, oxygen, and hormones via the umbilical cord. The brain, which will continue to grow and develop throughout the pregnancy, makes up nearly half of the embryo in these early stages. As the eyes, nose, ears, and mouth, along with all major organs, continue to develop in month 3, the baby will begin to look more and more human with each passing day. The second trimester lasts from weeks 13 to 27. The fetus will more than double in size during this time, and soon its movements may be felt by the mother. Hearing first develops around week 18, but the fetus will not respond to sounds outside of the womb until approximately week 25. Starting at week 28 and lasting up until delivery, the third trimester is a time for final touches such as eyelashes and taste buds. With most major development complete, the fetus will gain nearly half a pound a week. To make room for this rapid growth, the mother's internal organs adjust significantly throughout the pregnancy. Dropping lower into the pelvis, a fetus typically turns heads down in preparation for birth. Most bones will have hardened by this time, though the skull will remain relatively soft to ease the delivery process. Labor is divided into stages, beginning with the dilation of the cervix and resulting in the delivery of both the baby and the placenta. Despite thousands of years of human pregnancies, scientific understanding has only recently begun to catch up, leading to an increase in success and safety for both mother and child. As our understanding of pregnancy continues to develop, so do technology and reproductive medicine, with much more in store for the future of pregnancy.
Okay, so we had an overview of the different stages of pregnancy. What's really cool is to see when different parts of the body form. So we're actually gonna zoom into one part of that video in just a moment. But the first definition that we're gonna talk about, or the first vocab word we're gonna talk about is the placenta. Um, so this is a picture you've seen before. The ovaries are over here, ovulation happens, and the egg travels down the fallopian tube. And at this stage, do you see what's happening here? This is where sperm meets the egg, otherwise known as fertilization. The fertilized egg travels down the fallopian tube and implants itself in the uterine wall around day 9. So these numbers are counting the days from ovulation. And then the embryo will start to grow with something called the placenta. So let's see what the placenta is. So the placenta is an organ that develops during birth, and it provides oxygen and nutrients to a growing baby and removes waste products from the baby's blood. So it's this organ over here labeled X. And nutrients and oxygen diffuse from the mother's blood to the baby's blood, and waste from the baby diffuses in the opposite direction to the mother's blood, and then the mother excretes the waste. The baby here does not have an immune system and does not have its own way of breathing. It can't breathe air at this point, and it also can't get rid of waste. So the placenta is super important for the exchange of, again, nutrients, hormones, and waste. One other thing to note is the placenta, the mother's blood and the baby's blood do not mix. So diffusion of the nutrients and oxygen happens through the placenta, but the actual blood of the mother and baby don't mix. And one reason why is because the mother's blood and the baby's blood could actually be incompatible. Their blood types might not match. So the blood would seem foreign. And we know from a previous unit what happens when there's a foreign invader inside of your body. Your immune system would attack it. So if the blood were to mix and the mother and the baby had incompatible blood, the mother's immune system would actually attack the baby. And that could be detrimental for both mother and baby. So going back to this diagram, once the embryo is implanted, it will start to grow, and it goes through different phases of growing. Oh, excuse me. Actually, while it's right after it's fertilized is what we want to talk about. That's when the cell that was originally just a sperm and egg cell will start to divide and start to grow even before it's implanted. So this phase right here, we're going to watch another video that's going to highlight what's happening during these phases.
One milestone event takes place just 2 weeks after conception, when the blastocyst is about the size of a poppy seed. This is the moment when the cells start to organize themselves into an embryo. The process is called gastrulation. With animals like frogs, whose embryos develop inside transparent eggs, it's easy to see it in action. After the egg becomes a hollow ball of many cells, some cells dive into the center, forming layers, which will go on to develop into different organs. In humans, gastrulation happens deep inside the mother's uterine lining, so it can't be photographed. But we think it works something like this. The blastocyst creates two oblong bubbles, one on top of the other. Sandwiched between them is a thin layer of cells. These are the cells which one day may become a baby. At the beginning of gastrulation, some cells begin moving toward the center. Then they dive downwards, creating a new lower layer. More cells plunge through, squeezing in between, forming a third. The cells in the three layers may not look different, but for each layer, a very different future lies ahead. The lower cells are destined to form structures like the lungs, liver, and the lining of the digestive tract. The middle layer will form the heart, muscles, bones, and blood. And the top layer will create the nervous system, including the spinal cord and the brain, as well as an outer covering of skin and eventually hair. This is a human embryo 3 weeks after fertilization.
All right, so I will link this video in case you guys want to watch the whole thing. It's 53 minutes long. But highlighting the process in which the ball of cells turns into different types of cells is called differentiation. And this happens through mitosis. So remember from our lesson last week, the beginning of the week, that mitosis is the division of cells. This is exactly what's happening here. So cells differentiate, they divide by mitosis and specialize and turn into different kinds of cells that have different functions in our body. Example, stomach cell and lung cell. So what's happening here is you have a zygote to start with. So a fertilized egg, which is just sperm and egg, and it's one cell. It becomes one cell. They merge to be one. And then that cell divides through mitosis. You can see it's dividing in these two stages. And it continues to divide until it's a ball of cells. And this ball of cells here is called a blastocyst. So up until this point, all of the cells are identical copies of each other because mitosis is when cells divide and make identical copies. It isn't until this stage that cells start to become different, right? If you think about your own body, you have all different kinds of cells. you have hair cells, skin cells, nail cells, bone cells, lung cells, brain cells, so many different kinds of cells. And it's at this stage called differentiation, when they turn into different kinds of cells, that occurs. And before that, you're literally a ball of cells that are all the same. So from here to here is when your cells start to become special types of cells. It's pretty incredible. So for example, layer A will become the skin and nervous system, like the video showed us. Layer B will become muscle and blood cells, and layer C will become digestive and respiratory system cells. So let's check our understanding on this concept. The diagram below represents the early stages of embryo development. The greatest amount of differentiation for organ formation will most likely occurs at arrow blank, A, B, C, or D. So let's look at these each. Arrow A is over here. We see a sperm meeting an egg, and this is fertilization. So this would be your zygote here, your fertilized egg. B is when that fertilized egg starts to divide by mitosis. And letter C is when you are a ball of cells. That ball of cells is starting to change. All these cells are the same. And then between this stage and the embryo, we have letter D. That's when differentiation occurs. So when all these different types of cells start to specialize. Differentiation is before the embryo is implanted. Okay, let's try another question. The diagram below represents some stages in the process of development. So we see that this diagram looks really similar to the other one, except instead of an embryo, it's showing a baby bird. So it's kind of like skipping some stages here. Stage 2 represents a cell that blank. 1 contains half the genetic material of an adult cell. 2 shows clear evidence of tissue differentiation. 3 has the complete genetic information to form an adult. Or 4 is genetically identical to one of the parents that produced it. So let's think about number 1, contains half the genetic material. If we're looking at stage 2, the sperm and egg have already met. And we know that 50% comes from mom, 50% comes from dad. So this can't contain just half the genetic material. That does not make sense. Does it show clear evidence of tissue differentiation? Well, we just talked about that differentiation happens between these two stages. So it can't be 2. Number 3 has the complete genetic information to form an adult. So if fertilization has already occurred, it probably does have all the genetic information here, but let's look at 4. Is genetically identical to one of the parents that produced it. Would this, if it contains 50% from mom and 50% from dad, be identical to just one of the parents? No, that doesn't make sense. And we can clearly see this is not asexual reproduction because of stage 1. So option 4 is only for asexual reproduction, which the offspring is identical to the parents. So our answer is 3. It has all the genetic information at stage 2. Okay, you're now ready to head on over to assignment 2 for this week. Assignment 2 does have a challenge question at the end. These are optional. And there are some diagrams shown for what we talked about today. All right, see you guys next week.